Our new Attorney General, a guy by the name of Merrick Garland, was almost a Supreme Court judge, but now he is Biden's Attorney General. The Attorney General is kind of the lawyer of the government, kind of the chief attorney for the entire United States. And he is out now saying that white supremacists are, quote, the most dangerous threat to our democracy. So above everything else that exists out there, and anything else like, China or Russia or global warming or anything like that, right? This is the most dangerous threat to America. It is white supremacy. And he's very specific about this. He says, in my career as a judge in law enforcement, I've not seen a more dangerous threat to democracy than the invasion of the Capitol. So he's kind of conflating a couple things here. This comes over from Legal Insurrection, posted by Mike LaChance. Great blog if you like legal news. Attorney General Merrick Garland told Congress that white supremacists represent the greatest danger to America right now. His testimony was a gross distortion of reality, according to Mike. He says it is nothing more than an attempt to reinforce the narrative pushed by the Democrats and the media since January of this year. White supremacy is a top security threat. So on Wednesday, he said that the violence that was incited by white supremacists poses the most dangerous threat to our democracy. And that's a quote. The assertion reflects near universal consensus among security experts, including those who worked for the Trump administration. Garland's warning came during a Senate Appropriations Committee hearing on January 6th riot. So we're going to talk about him too. They're also talking about white supremacist groups like the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. 5 people died as a result of the attack. Ashley Babbitt was shot. Brian Sicknick died of natural causes. Another officer died by suicide, and 2 people had heart attacks. In my career as a judge in law enforcement, I have not seen a more dangerous threat to democracy than the invasion of the Capitol, calling it an attempt to interfere with the fundamental element of our democracy. The Attorney General went on to say that there has been a hierarchy of things that we prioritize. This would be the one that we'd prioritize. So the one, okay? So again, the Attorney General, this is a very, very high position in our government. Extremely powerful. So he is telling us right now where they are orienting all of this stuff. Does BLM fall on this list? Does Antifa fall on this list? Doesn't sound like it. Okay. It's the white supremacists. It is the Capitol Hill rioters. And let's see what else we have. In a video of his testimony, he lumps the January 6th rioters in with the KKK, which he fails to mention was an outgrowth of the Democratic Party, the Unabomber, and Oklahoma City bombing. At the 4:15 mark, Garland says, when someone tries to promote or impose an ideology through acts of violence, those acts can be the most dangerous crimes we confront as a society. Here he is during the interview with the Appropriations Committee in Congress.
Yes, that 2019 was the deadliest year for violent domestic extremism since 1995. In March of this year, the intelligence community, in a report drafted by DHS, the FBI, and the National Counterterrorism Center, under the auspices of the Director of National Intelligence, assessed that domestic violent extremists pose an elevated threat in 2021. And in the FBI's view, the top domestic violent extremist threat we face comes from racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists, specifically those who advocate for the superiority of the white race.
All right. So racial division only from the white folks in particular. So that's very fun. Now, it's not just Merrick Garland, right? And this is going to be, folks, this is going to be the framework for all sorts of new laws and investigatory powers. They're going to be, asking for new permissions to go in and investigate even further. We already had the Patriot Act. We already know the government can, literally, jack themselves into every orifice of your body. And it is horrendous. Now, that was sort of exposed and dealt with under the guise of, 9/11 and international security and foreign terrorism. Well, now we're hearing this is all domestic terrorism. So now it's the Capitol Hill people in conjunction with the KKK, the white supremacists that are going to be wrecking America, and they need more enforcement power. This is the new Attorney General, just sworn in a month or two ago, who is now laying out the framework for what the next 3 years look like in terms of enforcement. So I don't endorse or support or even, I don't want anything to do with white supremacists or any of that stuff. But I'm just looking at the state of affairs in our nation, and I'm not real sure that is the biggest problem that we face in terms of national security, even in law enforcement security. I see a lot of other unrest around the country on a nightly and daily basis, and it doesn't look like the Proud Boys to me. Okay, it doesn't look like Who else were they talking about? The Oath Keepers, right? Are they out there throwing Molotov cocktails every night, or are they out there, setting up autonomous zones? Not that I have seen, okay, and I may just have missed it, but it has been two other groups, Antifa and BLM, that have been causing havoc for the last 12 months. Now, there is, without a doubt, absolute evidence that there were other groups involved in the Capitol Hill riots. No question about that. Many groups were. But the distinction here is which one is an ongoing, continual threat to the United States of America. One, to me, felt like it was a lot more temporary. It just kind of popped up, diffused itself. It was based around a very volatile event, which was the counting of the electoral votes. This other issue that is in our country has been just bubbling for months and years now. I mean, we had the summer of unrest last year, and we have it again this year, right? And it's going to keep continuing on for the foreseeable future. And for some reason, our country, our government's top attorney, is just not even concerned about it. Just says it's all about white supremacists. It's about racial issues, but in particular about the white supremacists. And it's not just him. This is the federal government orienting in this direction. And so just keep in mind that there are going to be some serious enforcement powers that they're going to justify on the backs of investigating the white supremacists and the neo-Nazis, or whatever they want to classify them as. And those enforcement powers are going to spill over into the rest of our lives, into the lives of those of us that have nothing to do with that ideology, that think it is reprehensible and that it should be extinguished from a polite society. But the government is now going to say, nope, we're going to focus on them, and we're going to create this massive umbrella that's going to capture a bunch of other innocent people in it. And we're going to have to pay the consequences for it. The civil liberties that we already see eroding on a daily basis are going to continue further as the courts, the prosecutions, attorney generals around the country all fall in alignment with more enforcement, with more power. And it's hilarious that the Democrats largely are now sort of branding themselves as this defund the police movement. What they are talking about here is such a massive extension of the security state, of the intelligence state that exists in this country. They are going to sort of consume as many powers as they can that traditionally are protected by the Constitution. If you're a citizen here, right, you have the Fourth Amendment, the right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures and all of these things. But if we can justify the watering down of those rights because of the fact that the white supremacists are so dangerous that they almost literally destroyed America on January 6th, then the stakes are so high that we can't be bothered by those constitutional barriers. We have to start watering those down a little bit. And don't think that I'm just making this stuff up. I've read about it in case law. So have many other law students and lawyers out there. They know that there once was a fundamental right against certain government overreach that the courts over the years have just slowly started chipping away at. This is another slice in that long history of slices. The government's going to sort of reorient themselves to focus on this newly created domestic violent extremism category that just very uniquely happens to be focused on a demographic that is exactly opposed to them politically. They're not going to lump in any of the other racial unrest that come from BLM or Antifa or any other organizations that are on the side of the political spectrum that supports their cause. This is all about politics, and they are rallying the troops. We have another story comes over from the Epoch Times saying here that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security is now establishing a new intelligence unit to focus on domestic terrorism. Okay, Department of Homeland Security now saying we're going to focus on domestic terrorism. This is Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. He announced this on May 11th, a couple days ago. We have a new dedicated domestic terrorism branch within the Department Office of Intelligence and Analysis, INA. It's designed to ensure that DHS develops the expertise necessary to produce the sound, timely intelligence needed to combat threats posed by domestic terrorism and targeted violence. So my question, we need a whole new branch. We need DHS, and within DHS, we then need a domestic terrorism branch that is within the office. Even though we already have the FBI, we have local law enforcement, we have ATF, we have all sorts of agencies, many different alphabet agencies that already do this work, that are already supposed to stop bad things from happening in our country. But it's not enough. They need another one. So, well, the new administration is going to create one. Here it is. It's called the Office of Intelligence and Analysis. So there it is. Here is the press release over from Homeland Security. Let's take a look at what they have to say. DHS creates a new center for prevention programs and partnerships and additional efforts to comprehensively combat domestic violent extremism, DVEs. From Washington, building on the Biden-Harris administration's commitment to combating all forms of terrorism, the targeted violence, Secretary Mayorkas announced today, DHS was establishing a new center for prevention programs and partnerships to improve the department's ability to combat terrorism and targeted violence, consistent, of course, with privacy protection, civil rights, civil liberties, and blah, blah, blah. They're going to help build local prevention frameworks. They're going to replace the Office for Targeted Violence and Terrorism. He announced a new dedicated domestic terrorism branch within that department. The National Network of Fusion Centers and our deployed intelligence professionals who collect and analyze threat information alongside our state are going to share this information in a dynamic threat environment. Oh, okay. So we have CP3, we have INA. Since January 20 of 2021, DHS has increased the development, production, and sharing of intelligence and other information central to countering what? Domestic violent extremism. Now poses the most significant and immediate terrorism-related threat to the United States. So, not pipelines or anything like that. It's DVEs. On January 27th, the Department of Homeland Security issued, which is like 7 days after inauguration, so they issued a National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin due to the heightened threat environment. Secretary Mayorkas directed DHS to embrace a whole-of-society approach to combating domestic violent extremism. So we have Merrick Garland, we have Mayorkas. They're all in. In March, a report was released by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. They were warned that racially motivated extremists and militia violent extremists pose the most lethal domestic terrorism threats to the United States. The report noted that recent political and social developments, including claims by former Donald Trump and president about fraud in the election and restrictions related to COVID-19, fallout from the Capitol breach, and conspiracy theories, will almost certainly spur, quote, some domestic extremists to, quote, try to engage in violence this year. So you see who the problem is. See who the problem is? Anybody who questions the election, got that one. Anybody who has a problem with COVID restrictions, got that one. Anybody who has any issues with fallout from January 6th, like if you have a problem with the fact that certain defendants who are not even there have been arrested and not released, they're being held without bond for not even being there. Like if you have a problem about that and you talk about that, you're on the list. If you are somebody who has conspiracy theories, definitely got those, then you're on the list. All right, so I'm not going to be violent. I have no indication of being violent at all, but it sounds like what they just did was list off their opposition. It's like a lot of people who question them on those topics. So isn't that convenient? They just get to say, oh, anybody who disagrees with me is dangerous, right? Try that with your spouse. Okay, if you disagree with me, I think you're a threat to this household and you need to leave. Very nice way to argue. You could win every argument because any response to you is a dangerous threat and that person should be removed. All right, here is the order or the analysis from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. This was posted back on March 2021. I want to run through this quickly. You're going to see here that the IC, so the intelligence community. Now, a quick reminder on what the DNI is. It is the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. So we've talked about it a lot on this channel. But if you do a diagram, you're going to see that this is kind of the hub. And all of the other intelligence agencies throughout the country are kind of the spokes. So the ODNI is in the middle, and they're sort of communicating with all of the other different intelligence agencies throughout the country, sort of as the hub and spoke model. They're the clearinghouse for all of the data from all of these different agencies. So the executive summary from the DNI, which is the hub of all of these different agencies, is as follows. They say that domestic violent extremists who are motivated by a range of ideologies and galvanized by recent political and social events, they pose an elevated threat to the homeland in 2021. They also assess that lone offenders or small cells of DVEs adhering to a diverse set of violent extremist ideologies are more likely to carry out these violent attacks. They assess that racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists and militia present the most lethal threats against, saying that they're going to be focusing attacks against civilians and against the government. The intelligence community says that U.S. RMVEs who promote the superiority of the white race are the DVE actors with the most persistent and concerning transnational connections because individuals with similar ideological benefits exist outside the United States. The intelligence community says that they're going to exploit a variety of social media platforms. So we're already seeing those things get limited, right? In Canada, they're talking about that new bill that is now going to essentially censor and monitor certain online communities like YouTube channels. Not good for our friend Viva. Maybe he should move to the States. Viva. The IC assesses that several factors could increase the likelihood of lethality. DVE lone offenders will continue to pose significant detection and disruption challenges. We all have a scope note. So ODNI is expected. We've got a scope. Here is the categories of different domestic violent extremists that they say. We have racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists. We have animal rights environmental violent extremists. Oh. We have abortion-related violent extremists. Okay. Let's take a look at this one. Racially or ethnically motivated. Let's see. It says DVEs with ideological agendas derived from bias, often related to race or ethnicity, held by the actor against others, including a given population group. So that doesn't say anything about white supremacy, which is curious. We have anti-government, anti-authority, violent extremists. Oh, no. Is this all anybody who questions the government? Are they in this category? So this says this is DVEs with ideological agendas derived from anti-government or anti-authority sentiment. Who are they talking about? I love the government and Joe Biden. Doing a good job out there. We also have, it says here, social or racial hierarchies, perceived government overreach, negligence, or illegitimacy. Oh, no. Oh, no. What happens? We have militia violent extremists. So DVEs who take overt steps to violently resist or facilitate the overthrow of the government. Don't want that. Anarchists, violent extremists. How about sovereign citizen violent extremists? So we got those. Then we have all the other domestic terrorism threats. So it's like ideological agendas that they can't really categorize. So personal grievances, beliefs that problems with religion, gender, or sexual orientation, and the like. So if you're anti-government, now you're on the list. It's all right. You're in good company. There's a lot of us on there. We have Nadar Blasir says, this is where Congress should be doing their jobs and calling this AG in to a hearing to ask him to bring the proof of his statements. They have oversight. Where is the data? They don't have it. Yeah, that's a good question, right? Where is the data? I mean, honestly, if somebody could just show me the data, if somebody's like, listen, hey, Rob, look, man, look, we have 1,000 incidents of white supremacists every year going out there and torching buildings or killing people. And we have these little organizations that have, logos and signs, and they're out there marching on the streets. Then I would say, you're right, it is a problem. It needs to be addressed. But I don't see that happening. The only real damage that I see are sort of these intermittent, sporadic incidents. No question about those, right? You can easily go through and pick a shooting where some racist white supremacist shot and killed somebody. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these organized movements. I'm talking about this, these terrorist cells they're talking about that are out there. Now, this might happen. Something might happen down the road, and I might have to come back here and eat my shorts. But the point is that for the last 12 months, we've been seeing a different type of protest. We've been seeing they're setting up their autonomous zones in all sorts of different locations, their own countries. Okay. Are the Proud Boys doing that? I haven't seen it. They just say, no, this is our territory now. And they're the people who want to overthrow the government. You have other contingencies that just take over pieces of a city. And that's not a danger to American democracy. I must be missing something here. I'm asking for help. I need some help on that. I don't know what's happening. We have I'm Not Gas says, I hate how they keep calling every group a white supremacist group. Oath Keepers and Proud Boys may be idiots. your word, says, but their members have all races and none of them espouse any racial supremacist ideals. Just kidding, not my guess. Listen, we talked about this. I know it's so stupid. We talked about, I think one of the Proud Boys, I think was an African-American guy who was a group of it, Enrique Tarrio. He's like an African-American guy, right? He's not even a white guy. And so the response was from the Washington Post, and you can Google this. It's called multiracial whiteness. It's the idea now that even if you are not a white person, if you are a Hispanic or an African-American male or any other demographic, any other race or ethnicity, if you still espouse a certain political ideology or believe a certain way, like if you're a Proud Boy and you love America and you love small government and you like whatever they believe in, I don't know. But if you're of that contingency, then you're a multiracial white supremacist. You're a white supremacist even though you're not white, because you have this multiracial whiteness in your brain. There's an actual article about this. It's called Multiracial Whiteness, because there was some response. They were saying, well, if Trump's such a racist, how come all of these minority groups are supporting him in the last election? Why do his rallies not look like a bunch of neo-Nazis? Why do they look pretty diverse, in fact? Well, the response is because they're multiracially white. They are sort of inheriting a lot of the same problematic ideology that white people have. They're taking that and incorporating it into their own, and that's problematic. And so they needed to do something about it. So you had a Washington Post or some journalist who had to write about it and inform us that this is a big problem. Liberty or Death says, pretty cool how Antifa and BLM don't make the list. It is white supremacists. So not China, not Russia, not people who hack into pipelines and nearly shut half the nation down. Nope, a bunch of Democrats in white hoods are the worst people ever. The KKK, former Democrats. Robert Byrd, right? KKK guy. We have Edon Test says, you have gone over and over this as well as so many other commentators. There is zero evidence that the people who breached the Capitol were white supremacists. And also, our republic does not live in the Capitol. If the entire building were to sink into the earth with everyone in it, not that I wish that would happen, but if it did, we could have the government up and running in a few days and new representatives elected within a month. America is its ideals, not representatives. 100%. Yeah, 100%. And what is this idea that, I think I heard this first from Scott Adams or somebody, I can't recall who, but it was the idea that the person, one of the defendants who was carrying the podium out of the Capitol building, like that was the new person in charge of our government. Like in Lord of the Rings, he sees the ring, which I never even saw that movie or movies, but apparently if you have the ring, you control the world, something like that. If you have the podium of the Capitol building, you get to run the government. You're president now, in fact, because apparently that's what happened. They seized control of America for 4 hours. They weren't really effective leaders, but apparently, American democracy is that fragile. It's like a game of capture the flag. If you capture that territory, it's yours now. You get to run the country. Pretty cool. Didn't know that's how it worked. I thought we had a constitution and elections and a system of federalism where we've got a federal government and state governments, and we're sort of distributed and, moderately decentralized, kind of part of the reason we have different states all spread out across a great country. So a lot more kind of goes into it than just walking out with a gavel and a podium and a laptop from Nancy Pelosi's office. Doesn't make you president and ruler of the free world. All right, sorry, everybody. We have Jeremy Matrita says, I would argue that these self-righteous, self-important ideologues are the biggest threat to our representative republic. These people irritate me to no end. They overinflate situations and downplay their own indiscretions. Oh, that's beautiful there, Jeremy. They overinflate situations and downplay their own indiscretions. I like that. It's kind of poetic. Who was it that said that they would rather be governed by the first 400 people out of the phone book versus the first 400 people who ever graduated from Harvard? I think it was Buckley. I think it was William Buckley who said that. I'd rather be governed by the first 400 people out of the phone book than the first 400 people out of Harvard. And I think there's something to that. All of these really, really intellectual people think that they can sort of solve all these problems for the rest of us peasants. And it doesn't always work like that because they're not that smart. They think they are, but they don't really recognize all of the unintended consequences. They can't think it through because they're actually not that intelligent. They just think they are, and they like to puff themselves up with their own moral superiority by telling the rest of us, talking down their noses at us, telling us that we have to do all of these things in the world, else society fails and it's our fault. It's not how that works. So there are many of us who I think are connected a little bit more to reality. And oftentimes it's not the intellectuals. It's not the people with their heads buried in the books, because they don't know what it's like to go out in the summer and dig a ditch. I dug an entire swimming pool by hand on the side of a mountain one summer. Okay. I know what that feels like. It is a big part of the reason I went to law school and said, I'm not going to be digging anymore. And a lot of these, Harvard billionaire, intellectuals who grew up with a silver spoon in their mouths their whole lives, they never experienced that. They don't know what hard work is. They know what it's like to just be born into a trust fund. They get elected. They fraternize with all of the same other intellectuals, all high society. And what do? They get elected and they pass a bunch of bureaucratic laws that don't actually help the little people. They don't actually do much to enhance society other than to help them accumulate and gobble up more power and make themselves feel more relevant for the foreseeable future. And quite frankly, we're all sick of it. And Donald Trump, to his credit, sort of shook that up a little bit. And I don't agree with all his policies. I got a lot of issues with a lot of things that he has done. But what felt so good about that is finally it was kind of somebody who didn't play that game. And you could say, arguably, that he was part of that same class, right? Hobnobbing up with Clinton and all of these other people. He was really part of that, but he didn't really govern that way. And we could see that because both parties hated his guts, and they're both doing everything they can now to make sure that he does not get back in there. And when that happens, it kind of makes me want to go, well, if you hate him, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. If you guys hate that man, well, maybe it's something that we want to investigate a little bit further the next go round. So it's very condescending. It's very egomaniacal. All of these elected people think that they're way smarter than us, and they're just not. I mean, and you can just watch them for about 10 minutes and you can pick that up. Dr. Renal MD in the House says, Merrick Garland, he was pretty moderate before his nomination by Obama for the Supreme Court. For him, Trump is the symbol of the people who stole his legacy. He will never be a Supreme Court judge. I'm not surprised he has a grudge. It's a good point. He is biased, and he is the last person who should be the AG. The country needs an AG who follows the law and was not almost a Supreme Court judge. Yeah, so the good doctor is telling us a little bit about what happened back during, when was that? Yeah, it was back during the Obama years. So it was Obama's last term, and Scalia died, and they were going to nominate Merrick Garland, but they didn't control the Senate. The Senate was controlled by Mitch McConnell, who said, nope, you're not getting a nomination in. And there was a lot of time left. I think it was like 8 or 9 months until the next election of Donald Trump. And so they basically stalled the nomination of Merrick Garland, who now is the Attorney General. The Republicans did this. And so Merrick Garland, of course, is not on the Supreme Court, and he's now too old, in my opinion, to be nominated to the Supreme Court. So he's got to settle for the next best thing, which is the Attorney General. Still a very, very, highly prestigious position, but it does give him the opportunity now to exercise a little bit of that influence. And if he doesn't like one particular demographic in the country, he's got a lot of power to, go in that direction. Now, we haven't seen anything that would lead me to believe that he is doing that, but the point is well made nonetheless. Last question in from iOnion says, the boldness of the current administration is disgusting. HR 1, SB 1, calling everyone a terrorist is like the war on terror. It is nebulous and never ending. That is the point. Total control, no credible threats. Truth is the enemy to these people. Thoughts? Well, I think what you're seeing right now, it's a good point, and they are being extremely aggressive. I mean, they are shooting for the fences with some of this stuff. In particular, the voting bill, they're talking about sort of, working their way around the filibuster in order to get a lot of this stuff passed. And there was an article I saw yesterday that was talking about Democrats are getting a little bit frustrated that they're not getting more accomplished because the clock is ticking, folks, right? They've got until 2020 until we have another election that could easily change the balance of power in both houses. And so they've got, until November 2022, between now and then, to start cramming stuff through. And they've got a very tight margin. And they've got some Democratic senators who aren't playing ball. They've got Joe Manchin. They've got Kyrsten Sinema here from Arizona. God bless her for, not rolling over on everything. And we've just got a lot of Democrats who were expecting this to be sort of this cascade of progressive reform, and they're just not getting much done. So they're going to get frustrated about it, and they're going to get aggressive, and they're going to have to use phrases like this, to pull out the stops to say, well, if you oppose this, like Stacey Abrams said, Well, you're an insurrectionist. What do you mean? We're talking about an audit in Arizona. What do you mean that has anything to do with anything that happened on January 6th? Well, she's going to make that extension, and they're going to continue to investigate these domestic violent extremists and, hound everything. Anybody who is anti-government or who questions anything that the bureaucrats are doing somehow is a danger and a threat. And that's going to open up Pandora's box. They're going to grant themselves all, a whole new slew of authority here. And we're going to chronicle it. It's not allowed. You can't do that. But things might change in 2022, and they might change dramatically, and they might change quickly, and they might change even more in 2024. So get it while the get in is good, as they say. And the Democrats know that. This is their time to go out there and really reform America, and they're going to try hard to do it. Great questions. Thank you so much for those. And thank you, iOnion, for that one. Want to also welcome, we have some new people who joined up on our watchingthewatchers.locals.com community. If you want to sign up, you can go check this out down here. But big welcomes over to Fatty Patty is in the house. Love that name. We got Marty0378. Welcome, Marty. We have Fox on Locals. So Fox is here now. We have No Name Man, which is very mysterious. The No Name Man is here joining us over at Locals, and it's a great platform. I want to thank those of you who asked questions today. They all came exclusively from Locals. Big thanks to Want to Know. We got Chairman Liberty in the house, Edon Tess, all of you on there. Really appreciate it. Good stuff, good thoughts, good questions today. If you want to sign up as well and be a part of this tremendous community, you can do that by going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. You can also get a copy of all these goodies when you get over there. So first and foremost, you can download a free PDF of my book. It's called Beginning to Winning, and it is free. Just go and download it. You can download a copy of the slides we went through, copy of my impeachment party document, so you can impeach anybody in the country if you want. You can download my existence system document. That's for free as well. Share links throughout the day, meet some great people. And then I want to remind you, we've got some cool stuff coming up. So on Saturday, May 22nd, we're going to do a monthly Locals meetup via Zoom. You can have your cameras off. Okay, keep this in mind. It's 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time, which is going to be 4 p.m. Arizona here. Cameras are allowed off. That's no problem. I would appreciate you talking, though, because I certainly don't want to be talking to myself. But we'll come up with some questions. Basically, I just want to kind of meet everybody. We kind of did this on Clubhouse back in the day, and it was a lot of fun. We got to sort of, connect with each other, put a name to a face, and hear from other people talking, not me. So I would love to hear from all of you. I mean, I think we're having fun here, and Clubhouse was fun, and so we kind of want to open that up, make it a little bit more intimate. So it's only for the supporters over at Locals, and we've got 2 dates, May 22nd and June 26th, so about a month apart. Then we also have law enforcement interaction training. This is coming up on Saturday, June 12th. That's going to be from 12 to 2. The seminar is really going to be about 90 minutes. I have about, I don't want to go overboard. I want to make it sort of interactive where we can pause and ask questions, and I think 2 hours I'll go people's eyes will glaze over. So we'll keep it interactive. We'll do 90 minutes, and then we'll stick around for another 30 minutes. That's coming back on June 12th. We're going to talk all about interacting with law enforcement. What happens if you get pulled over? What do you say? What happens if they knock on your door? What happens if they call you on the phone? What happens if they're at your kid's dorm? What happens if your kids get pulled over? A lot of things that we can talk about. So come prepared for that. June 12th, once again, free for all local supporters. And so if you want to get in on that, head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com to do that. And lastly, before we get out of here, one quick reminder that my name is Robert Gruler, and I am part of the R&R Law Group, which is right here. And we help people who have been charged with crimes. We're very passionate about it. We like to help provide safety and clarity and hope in their cases and in their lives. And so if you happen to know anybody who's been charged with a crime in the state of Arizona, whether it's a DUI, a drug offense, a misdemeanor, a felony, anything and everything in between, we can help with that. We can also help with closing out old warrants. So if you have a case that you forgot a court date on, we can help you clear that up. We can make sure that you can get your license back, restore your rights to possess a firearm, restore your rights to vote again. There's a lot of benefits that you can get by having a clear record. And so we want to help you get that done. So if you happen to know anybody in the state of Arizona who is in need of any of those services, we offer free case evaluations. We're located in Scottsdale. We would love the opportunity to help. I have a book. We can give them a copy of the book. We'll send them any information. The only thing we want to do is help. If we can work together, great. If not, we're going to send them out of our office better than we found them. And so if you happen to have any referrals, all of our contact information, phone number is in the description below. We would very, very much appreciate it. And I want to show you this. So I want to show you this little ta-da. So if you're confused and you don't know who to call R&R Law. Ta-da! Look at that. It's like the heavens shining the beautiful spotlight of justice. The R&R Law Group. Ta-da! All right, so enough of that. So that's it for me, everybody. Thank you so much for indulging me on that little fun thing. I want to thank you so much for being here. We're going to be back here, same time, same place next week. It's going to be at 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast for that one Florida man. Everybody have a tremendously lovely weekend. Hopefully unplugged from politics a little bit because we're going to be back ready to go next week. I'll see you then. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.